Okay, it's December. I haven't done a little clip for a while. Not much going on the farm, just sort of maintenance jobs. But it's the sort of middle of December, and this is our first really hard frost. We've had quite a few frosts down to sort of 2 degrees below, but really you need something 4 or 5 degrees below before we can start cultivating the frost, which is ripping up land that's coming for spring drilling, but has got a lot of weeds and everything grown in it since we ploughed it. And I'm just going over now to see one of my 2 guys who are cultivating the frosts to take over for them while they have a break. So here I am doing this cultivating, just taking over one of my guys while he has a break, and as you can see it's actually going pretty well. The reason why we wait for a frost is because in the winter time obviously the soil is very wet, having had quite a lot of winter rain on it, and to avoid compaction we wait for a frost which holds the tractor out of the ground, allowing us to cultivate. I'm actually inside the soil, and it's actually, you know, reasonably wet still, but it's the cultivator's doing a really good job. This is an old 5-metre Kong-skilled cultivator which has been on the farm all the time since I've been here, and I came back here to farm in 1985, and we used to use them for cultivating the stubbles after we'd burnt the wheat straw, but nowadays they're just really brought out to do this kind of job. They're quite a wide tine spacing, which is quite good for this time of the year. Now this field here, one of the reasons why we're cropping it in the spring is because, as you can see, there's a huge amount of rubbish, weeds that have come up since we subsoiled and we really disked this field to get as much weeds to germinate as possible. My only concern is they're coming out in sort of quite big large lumps, and the weeds still have quite a lot of soil around their roots, but the frost will help to kill some of those exposed roots and hopefully kill the plants. But if we're going to make a good job of this, we'll have to probably come back and cultivate it again in the frost later in the winter, and before we sow it in the spring have to make sure that we kill all the weeds at that point as well. The only downside about having to rely on frosts to work in is that, of course, usually by about lunchtime in the day the frosts have come out of the ground, and you can no longer work because the ground is soft again, but of course the frost comes back in again in the early hours of the morning, and so to get across the land it just means 1 or 2 early starts, but that's what farmers are used to. And actually it's quite nice getting up in the morning really early and there's no one else about. You can really see those tines really ripping the soil up. It also gets a little bit of air in the soil as well, and levels it out a little bit. But you can see the level of weeds we've got in here, and you can't really see them very well because it's got a hoarfrost on them. But there's volunteer cereals, there's oats, there's black grass, there's the odd volunteer bean as well. So there's a lot to get rid of. Really, I would have liked to have come here when these weeds were smaller. But with all the drilling we had to do in the autumn, and then with the weather turning so wet, we haven't had a chance to get back on here, which is a shame, but which means we've probably got to go through 1 or 2 more times to get rid of them. But as you can see, where the cultivator's going through, the point I was making on the tractor is that, you know, there's still a lot of soil around those roots, because the cultivator, because it plucks it out with the frost, it can't shake all the dirt off because the dirt is so hard with the frost. But you know, 1 or 2 are coming out as individual plants, but not very many. But probably, you know, if we get you know, leave this for a few days, and if it stays cold, then we'll come through and do it again, and it'll break down 1 or 2 more of these clods. And then in the spring, as I said before drilling, we'll when it's drier in the sort of spring, hopefully when it's drier and sunnier and warmer, before we drill it, we will be able to knock some of that dirt off and kill some more of the weeds to provide a nice clean seed bed.